not too bad considering, like, it's kind of cool. It's going to be better than what we were doing before.
All right.
And then I could just edit and go from there.
Take what you need from it. All right, so the discussion points come from James's game, right? Okay. So take up your right foot forward position, right? So you see how the tip is straight up. We want to be more, so if my hands are here, right? Your point would be at my hands is the guide point.
That low? Okay.
Yeah. So the point of it all is if my hands go up over here, then your point, or your goal is to kind of track where my hands are at with your point. Right, so if my hands are here, so if I gotta go over, you can set that. You feel me come down, you shoot the point in.
Okay.
All right. Generally, his rule of thumb is it hits the cross, thrust.
Okay.
But like we don't necessarily have to go that far. I generally find that once you feel it towards your strong, go. Right? Okay. You have fast abilities. It's just if it hits the cross, automatic intention should be to shoot.
Okay.
Okay, so taking up the position of the right foot forward. So if I'm here, right, I come up over here, right? If I'm down here, see how this is a trackingable thing?
Yeah.
If I try to shoot over you from that position, you can easily fall into the jack places, displace, and thrust into me.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a lot more of a parry or riposte kind of action.
Okay.
But because you're so efficient at it, it looks like it looks like it's super fast. So if I'm tracking you at your hands, right, and I'm tracking you and you do anything at me, right, I'm already there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So one of the other aspects he talks about is the back, this foot, right? So on your left side. So if you're tracking me, so no, keep your right foot forward. I want you here. Right, because if my left foot's forward, your right foot's forward.
Yeah.
You can automatically, following our hips, I go this way, I'm in your hips.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And to work with the lateral motion, if you're tracking my hands, when you see me going to step offline and cut, that back foot steps out. So when I throw that cut, now you're already in a strong position, and you can go. Okay. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I'm not wasting the movement.
Correct. You're not, and you're also not being stagnant.
Right.
Right. So if we're fencing and we're profiting out, right, and I throw this, that gets you there already, and now that's a threat. I have to try and react.
Okay.
Right. So let's drill that in a few times. So right, we're in these positions. I'm moving around. I'm checking. Throw this cut, catch, and you can easily follow through.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So do a couple more times, right? We're going, right? Boom. So don't stress too hard about being perfectly point on when you get the capture.
Right.
It can be off a bit because your next steps will set that up.
Okay.
Right? And that'll save your thumb from getting potentially smashed.
Okay.
Right? So we're fencing, I'm moving around, you're following my hands with your point. I throw the cut. Perfect. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Right, so the big thing about it, so if you throw a cut at me, when he's doing is when you throw the cut at me, right, this step, so now my whole area of effect is widened. I've captured hands and I can just make that small lunge.
Right.
So I'm wide in my feet here to be tight here.
And that's where I'm getting that step through. That's where the next step. So instead of being here, here.
Yes.
So I'm shortening my measure.
Correct. All right, and the other process too is that you're still going this way into the line.
Yeah.
Right, your initial step, so set up again. So I make the cut. Your initial step at the back foot to take that position already widened you out.
Right.
Right? So when you thrust straight on at me, you can just take that front, your right foot, the black sock foot, and come straight at me. Right? See how you have to collapse your arms to not hurt me? Right? So let's do it again. And this time I want you to extend your arms fully to touch. I'll go back. Okay? So we're here. Keep that point down. There you go. So when I cut, see how it bounced off that cross so easily? So now you shoot straight forward and now lunge with what you need and you're in.
Right. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that you're going to hit every time, but it's much more that you've shortened up your movements so much
Right.
that you can work,
Yeah.
right? Because you're also guaranteeing I slide down to your cross.
Right.
And if I touch your cross, thrust.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so I'm gonna do a couple more of these so you feel it, right? So I'm here, perfect, perfect. Do you see how that's working?
Yeah.
Right, so basically you're enacting winding with your footwork to capture.
Right.
And now you can shoot straight on,
Okay.
right? Is that making sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So I throw the cut, and then you're just there already,
Right.
right? Try to not stress again about having it perfectly set up on. It can be up a bit to guide it down into that crooks a bit.
Okay, I think I am setting there, but then it's just I'm
might just be
already
following it.
setting into the thrust.
Yeah. You don't
So I think I'm rushing what you're trying to tell a little bit.
a little bit. Let's just not worry about the thrust part. Let's just worry about being here and then capturing.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, let's just do that. All right, so I go here, right? Good. So you see that difference? It
Right.
automatically guarantees I go here.
Right.
But if you have gloves on, what's that hitting?
Gloves. Yeah.
Right? So in a tournament setting, there you go.
Okay. So I just need to turn a little bit.
Right. That little bit of turn also saves your regular fingers regardless.
Right.
Right, so if I throw here, good. And now, when you wind up, I can't do shit because you're guaranteeing
Right, because
me
I'm
up.
locking it.
Even if you don't lock it, you're breaking my structure more in that last second.
Right. Okay.
Right? We don't have to necessarily lock it. Like, so come at me. Right, so I'm here. When I get to here, if I don't capture it, but if I'm here, right, that little bit of a shove still sets me up.
Right.
You feel that slight shift in the arm?
Yeah, it's the set on to the lever, so it's just timing that lever.
Correct. Right? So you're doing an absetzen
Right.
into a thrust.
Okay. So I'm here, right? So that little bit of a turn here is what that set on is.
Yes,
And
on the
then
lever.
that's what,
Guides me in.
right. So it's here. It's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right, so when I throw in, there it is. Now I'm fucked.
Right.
You can just extend and drive.
Right, but it's that little turn of the key turn.
Mm-hmm. That minor
Right.
turn piece is what's going to solidify it. Right? But again, you need to have that point more on like such.
Right.
Right? And you can even have it slightly over your hip bone here. Right? That still works out for me doing this. Right? Because now you can
Right.
press out.
Okay.
So either one works out.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now what happens when it fails?
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to throw the cut. You're going to step off and capture, right? So we get here and I hurry up and do this. You're already in a lateral place, right? What do you think is the best action for you to perform here? Because I'm pushing it off this way. There, yes. That's why we want that timing
Yeah.
of that delay. So if I hurry up and I'm doing this action, you can hit the arm
Right.
and then cover, run away,
Because
whatever.
if once I hit the arm, I'm here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like that's the importance of what I'm trying to say about the timing effect.
Right.
Because what also happens if they just cut and hurry and cut around? Kind of a game when you move laterally.
Just
So-
parry.
Right. So let's play with that just a tad bit. So if I cut in and I cut in, you're solidly able to move that way.
Right. And then the thrust.
And then
right?
just thrust whatever you want.
Yeah.
Is that making sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like doing this delayed timing of making sure you have this
Right.
can set you up for everything else you want.
Right. Okay.
So we're adding what Jack likes to do, right, of that coming across,
Mhm.
and we're adding a footwork element into it,
Yeah.
and then driving in.
Right.
But because you moved off, you've changed the center line,
Right.
right? So you're there on me, I throw this, the line's now changed,
Right.
right? Your line is now changed up, and when you thrust at me, right, it's even worse, and you can drive in.
Okay.
Is that making decent sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Right, so this is the effect of the James game.
Okay.
right? So you're out here, you're feeling, so if we're both in long point, right? So if I hurry up and get here, right, who won?
You did because you were faster on the overbind.
Right, so this is where we can start taking it into the bore knock game, right?
Right.
The position you're in is very knock oriented usually. But if you're set up in there and I let our swords touch, right? You need to put your sword over the top and step that way.
Okay. So.
Right, so we're here. Now, where are you? You're back into your same place.
Right.
And now you can set up for the thrust. If I press it off, right, you can drive in, do other things.
Okay.
Is this making
Yeah, that makes sense.
good sense? Right, so that lateral movement off.
Right versus forward.
Correct.
So it's like opposed, but changing center.
Right, and this is so it's opposed we use if we don't have to move.
Right.
Right, we're set a distance where movement's allowed.
Right.
Right, so if we're set up at this, if we're at this range,
Right.
and I throw a cut at you, this is where oppose comes out, right? Because it sets that up.
Right.
Because it's the fastest action, right? I make one step further out, right? That's where that lateral movement comes in more. Does that make sense?
Okay. Okay. So I should be going out instead of here to take that counter at that measure. Where if you were another half step back, that's when I take the
That's
step
when you move
forward. To
right?
meet
And
the
now
cut
we're here, we meet up, right?
Right.
Because now if you're online, what happens?
Right.
And you can drive in. Because now you do the wind and you go forward.
Okay, so this is in measure. This is opposed is too close.
Right?
Opposed is too close. This is too far.
Correct.
So in, too close, too far.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the measure game of understanding, right? Reality, you're going to end up to being to where they're in measure majority of the time,
Right.
right? Because they're going to try to come in. If they're out of measure and they're trying to
Bum rush.
bum rush you,
Right.
step straight back,
Yeah.
right? So when I come in,
Right.
right?
Because they need the point.
Exactly,
Yeah. Okay.
right? If they're fighting a far game and they're trying to just rush you,
Yeah.
create measure where you can still work,
Okay.
right?
Right.
They're too close, oppose comes out, but with oppose, we got to be brutal
Right.
because it's there, right? And then if they're in measure, that outward step
Right.
saves you, like more straight lateral step,
Yeah.
saves that action because now I fucked myself.
Right. But now this cut turns into a parry, not a cut.
Correct, but where is your point?
Online.
Right, and if I make it to where I cut,
Right.
to where I cut, you're in a better place,
Right. Okay.
right? This is also timing into Jeremy's work
Yeah.
because Jeremy likes lateral movements.
Yeah.
So he'll be here, and if you throw a cut at me, right, he'll do this with his work how.
Right.
Because if you're trying to go deep, he's going here
Right.
to drive it. Now he can set it up,
Right.
right? Or he can be here, and you throw the long cut, and he can go here with it
Right.
and still clip into you.
Yeah. But there's problems in that too.
There's problems and there's benefits, right?
Yeah.
Like everything has a
If you
give
can
and
play
take.
the speed game, if you can win that speed game, you got it every time.
Right. It's also tools, weapons, heights, builds.
True, yeah, yeah.
Like there's too many pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, like that compared to this, right?
Exactly.
That tool
And then-
compared to this, of course, that's going to win a Zork game all day. Yeah.
Right. With the reach portions,
Right.
right? But it also comes to being in like just the build, the timing.
Right.
There's too many variables in that to say
Really, yeah.
to say what's good or bad about it.
Okay.
Regardless, his use of the lateral step benefits him in particular actions.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's in that measure, so he's going to utilize this step to his advantage, which is that reach in those positions.
Right.
So the concept's the same, but how he's physically enacting it may be different.
Different, yeah. Okay.
And that's okay.
Right. Okay.
Because I don't care about fighting exactly like somebody, it's taking the concepts that they're talking about and utilizing it.
Right.
All right, so is this making good sense? Okay, so let's set up again. You're in that point forward, so this is your comfort zone, right? Right, now if I hurry up and get an overbind on you, right, because this is what was happening a lot in the last few tournaments, people get here and you just stay.
Yeah.
Well, when I go to do this, and then you flick out your point at me usually,
Okay.
right? That's where the doubles happen,
Okay.
right? So if you have your point out, and I hurry up and do this where I have overbind, I'm strong, you need to either Durst Vexel on the other side, right? And contain first before you drive, see what I do, or you zook in by pulling up and coming back down top of my sword. Right now.
Well, but
No, on top. All the way clear and back on top. Right? Right? So you're worried too much about the hit right now?
right.
Don't stop thinking about hitting me.
I feel like I did it right the first time, and then I didn't do it right.
Right, because you didn't step in.
Okay, so I need to step in.
Mm-mm.
So I was.
The first time you didn't step in.
Oh, okay.
Right, so you get me in the underbind. Right, so you have me and I'm letting you have the underbind. Right, I'm just doing this first.
Oh, okay.
I'm not doing anything else.
I guess I was trying to come off and come. Okay, I get.
Yeah,
maybe
so
I
I'm
was
just coming up and I'm just coming back on
back down. Okay.
to see how are you going to respond.
Okay.
Right? Because if I hurry up and just do that and rush in and you change through or anything, what happens? Double, both dead, right? We don't go until we know we have control,
Right. Okay.
right? So if they're constantly just trying to put pressure on top of you because you're in a center line place,
Right.
You can zook in on top, right? So again, don't step,
Don't step.
right? So I gain now, because now I might do this, right?
Right.
And then that gives you time to take the line back around and do what you want.
Okay.
Is this making sense?
Yeah.
It's a little bit complicated,
Yeah.
but it's more about,
It's also that right side stuff, and I don't do that well. So.
right, but so don't even stress about coming down with the long edge onto it.
Okay.
Come up and go back with your false edge,
Okay.
right?
So you have the overbind, right?
I have the overbind, right? That's good, right? Because if I come around, you can now work your game.
Oh, that was bad. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Is this making sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's less of like what I would play normally, but like I do understand why it's needed in the toolbox.
Right. Is we don't want to rush in
Right.
in the situation. Because 9 times out of 10, what you're going to do is you're going to force them to freak out and come back out.
Right.
And as long as you're doing that and they're not gaining the overbind,
Yeah.
you're doing well.
Yeah, if I've stopped them from moving, advancing, then I'm okay.
Correct. Because then you can force it back to your game.
Right.
So like you were fighting somebody, so go to your long point, right? You were fighting somebody at Summer and they got you all the way down here
Okay.
and you never responded to them.
Okay.
And this is super dangerous,
Right.
right? And I think they went high and then you stabbed low.
Yeah. I think I was fighting Kyle.
Possibly Kyle.
Because I remember kind of feeling bad about it because it was dumb on my end to make that decision, and like that's why it was a double.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so like the rules of engagement, right? Right. I have the bind. I have control.
Right.
I have overbind. I'm winning.
Right.
If you don't respond to this, right, I can do what I want. If you hit me with a doubling action, like it sucks and it kind of details that you don't know you're not recognizing.
But if I'm that low, I can't really just.
No, but you can Durst Vexel easy, right?
Oh, you mean like?
Yeah, just.
Yeah, I just don't feel like that's as safe.
Or use footwork. Make a small step back. There you go.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense for me.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then if you make a small step back, you're back on top. You have overbind.
Right.
Right? Now if I start to go forward, you can hit me.
Right.
Or I freak out and I back off.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that making sense?
Makes sense.
So that's a lot of the tactical trees
Yeah.
of what we're trying to deal with. Cutting wise, we kind of already have that game,
Yeah.
right? Because if you point forward or something and I just knock your sword out the way, right? You just go back into your high tog, because if I'm just coming in like that, we already know that's an established good game.
Right.
Right? People either freak out or they hang,
Right.
and you can maneuver how you need to,
Right.
right? So like, those are a lot of our thoughts,
Okay.
right? You don't even necessarily have to come all the way high. You can knock from here and whatever.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends. It's just depends on what the situation is, right?
Right. Now, if your point is more up, right, this is easier for people to knock into,
Okay.
right? The more up it is, the more I can displace your sword. So that's where that's been so highly effective.
Okay.
Right? That's been highly, highly effective because people, you're up there, so they just knock your sword, so you go there.
Right.
Right? Where if your point's more point on me, right, it's harder for me to do that.
Right.
Right? Notice I didn't move near as much.
Yeah.
Because I have to concentrate on hitting your sword because it's a harder line.
Right. Okay.
Right? So that's some toolbox deals, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're like, I'm going to give him and see what he does.
Yeah.
He knocks my sword, cool, come down upon his soul.
Yeah.
He does nothing, go back to point on line.
Yeah.
Right? Point on line, he's not swinging at my sword, cool, track, 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 track. He's going to try and go at my hands, boom, boom.
Right.
Whatever.
Okay. And that's all if I have to play more tactfully out here,
Yes.
right? But if I come back to here, that's a whole different
strategy.
game. So if I am playing out here to be a little bit more cautious,
Right.
that's where all of this comes out. The second I change to here, this is a whole
different game. Now you're going to jack game.
Okay. Where it's that blitz, the 1-2 movement,
Yes.
making sure I'm cutting in, that kind of thing. Failures.
Correct.
That kind of thing. Okay.
Right? So that's the difference of the game. The James game is the grapple game. So being point forward, you're grappling, so you're out here trying to reach.
Right.
Right? So the point forward's that grappling game.
Right.
This is the boxer game.
Right.
Right? Because we're retracted back. We're waiting to fight. We're waiting to box.
Jab, jab.
Right. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at as this is a tactical programming. Right? So play your normal fencing game, your predominant, like higher ratio game that you play is the grapple game.
Right.
This is just a comfortable place.
Right.
Right? So the other part about it is you getting in measure with that.
Right.
So take up your stance, your point's on where my hands are generally at, right? So usually you'll secret, hold for a second, and come forward is a lot of your usual movement. This time I want you to set up into your position, and I want you to make that half, right?
Okay.
So if we're way out of distance, secret can work because you're covering more ground.
Right.
We're at this kind of range, right? You want to make it nice and cautious.
But not heel to toe, gather to heel
Basically,
to toe.
because you want to gather, right?
Right. So
if I,
gather heel to toe.
Exactly,
Gather
now.
heel to toe.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because it's faster movements. Because what happens if you're gathered?
I mean, I can go anywhere.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. So if you're coming in at me and I'm back here and you gather up and come forward and I come in, right? You're still set. Even if you didn't make your step, now make your step. Right now, oh shit, now, and now you set up for everything.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a lot more about we're going to just take what toolbox you already have and we're just cutting it in half.
Yeah.
It's a refinement. It's like use secret when you're far out because it helps you move faster.
Right.
The second you're not sure of anything, cut it down. Cut it down.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. Yeah.
Right? Remember, the further out you are, the more movement you can have. The closer you get, the tighter we want to keep it.
So if I'm just unsure, just keep it close. If I am knowing that like I'm way too fucking far away, I just need to jump in.
Yes.
Okay.
Right? Because then now we have a tactical game, right?
Right.
Because now you have the games where you're set up, boom. So if you're in your point forward game, that's where you want to be, right? So take big steps back just so we have video of it, right? So now if we're way out here, right, you can secret forward once, right? Because we're far away, boom. Now it's all, because now look at what's our range now.
Yeah.
Super close, right?
Right.
Now if you do anything, it's super tactical, right? Right?
Right.
So set up again in that same thing. You're gonna make one secret, a simple. I'm now gonna throw a cut at you, and when I do, I want you to
be off instead of no sub.
Correct.
So here.
Where's your point? Good. See how that sets that up just disgustingly great? Right? So you're staying centered as much as you need to be in your approach. You have a threat on me, which means that I need to do something here, or I might try to throw a cut over here.
Yeah.
Right? But with what you're in positioning wise, right, is that if you're in your position.
You take a step back.
Right? So no matter what I do,
right,
I'm going to just come into range so you see it.
Okay.
So you come into this range, boom. So just hold right here. So if I throw a cut over here, you step out to capture it, right? And then now you can stab and step straight at me. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You step back up. If I cut to this side, for whatever reason, this side's going to be too close. What would you do? Oppose, right?
Yeah.
And now you drive it through.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So as long as I'm cutting to the side with the foot back, you step with that foot. I'm cutting to the side with the foot forward, oppose, because you're too close on that
Yeah,
side.
because I can't, there's not really any other solution for
Right.
that.
And how you're waiting. Now you might be able to be here and step to capture that.
Yeah, but like I don't want to do that because I'm compromising structure.
Right. You're just going to parry it. You're not going to have necessarily
Right,
time
I won't
to
have
work.
any power behind the second, third, fourth intention.
Right. The only time you would go over here with the step is that you're like,
Oh
fuck,
shit, yeah.
right? He's coming around cover and I'm
Right,
leaving. Like
yeah,
I'm,
that's an emergency scenario
Right.
kind of situation.
so as long as you're going this way, a step. If they're coming this way, opposed.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that should help a lot with these tacticals.
Yeah.
So is that all coming into the mind good? Because this is what we're going to grind
Yeah.
for like a month.
Okay.
Just hyper fixating on all this, and we have it recorded so we can like
Yeah.
backtrack onto the conversation, or you can watch it and study it and make sure you're understanding all the pieces better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of it's just if you're far out, right? Big movements are good. The second you feel it's too close, gather up and tighten it, right?
Yeah.
So make sure when you're gathering up too, don't let it come heel to heel, right? Think about
I
like
can just come here?
Yes,
Okay.
just here,
Okay.
here, right? The
Yeah.
only time I care about gathering up underneath it necessarily is if we're really much in a strong bind already.
Right.
So if we like both throw a cut and we end up super close, right? We're here. Now this gather works out,
Okay.
like going in deeper because I'm basically setting up this foot
Right.
is now my new push point.
Right.
So now this is now my shove to come up
Okay.
kind of deal. So I want to be closer in that regard.
Right. Okay.
If I don't have contact, do not commit, right? Do not overcommit. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Love you.
Have you? Well, let's hope I pressed record.
I hope so.
I did.